Warning: the following program is a satirical look at Indigenous news, politics, and current events. Native Twitter is advised.
Anin bonjour and welcome to The Laughing Drum. Television so deeply and profoundly Indigenous, our full-back Sitting Bull tattoo has a little Louis Riel tattoo on its arm. I am your host, Tim Fontaine, back for another episode of whatever the heck this show is supposed to be. And what a show it is. As always, the Red Power panel is here and they are raring to go. This week, the Red Power panel is a man who will soon be moving to British Columbia and will basically be dead to us, Sasha Mark.
Accurate.
When the real Elvis needed an Ojibwe body double, he called this man Jerry the Big Bear Barrett. And the Buffy St. Marie of Indigenous comedy, Alyssa Black Wolf, kicks in.
And another thing.
Welcome to you all, my friends. All right, enough of this nonsense. Let's get down to business. We begin in prohibition news, where a pair of Manitoba First Nations made headlines for their efforts to deal with drugs and drug dealers. Both the Peguis Cree Nation and the Sagkeeng First Nation have banished suspected meth and opioid dealers from their communities. And Sagkeeng has even gone so far as to bulldoze the home of at least one suspected dealer. Red Power panel, what do you make of this?
What an easy topic to make jokes about, you know?
They're reading about it, and my phone goes off. It's my dealer. I'll be back in a second.
You know what? I find that whenever there's a problem at home, you know, such as my kids watch TV too much, I find that a good solution is to burn the TV. You know, when we have an abundance of Starbucks, find burning those down and bulldozing them. I feel like that's a really good solution. When we have too many cankerworms in the trees, just you know, bulldoze the trees and problem solved. Just like that, because it addresses the problem, right?
There you go.
Like, you know, head on, bulldoze.
Anybody want to talk?
Well, I had an idea years ago, and this was the idea was given to me by a police officer on reserve, and he said that when they have a suspected drug house on reserve, what they do is park a police car in front of that house. So anybody that's coming and going don't know if the cops are in there now, busting the place, or what's going on. But it's a deterrent that saves, not save the property from, you know, actually burning it to the ground. Yeah. But, and other people have said, you know, we're begging for housing. How damaged is the house if it's a meth house? I don't know. I don't know if there's been studies, but it might smell. But Mike Holmes can make it right.
We just need Mike Holmes.
That's right.
I've always been told that meth doesn't belong on reservation.
It doesn't belong anywhere.
But it belongs with the Ontario Conservative Party, I believe. What I was going to say is, I think it's really difficult for, like, we talk a lot about an opioid crisis. We talk about a lot about like a meth crisis currently going on, and I find that cities themselves have a difficult time dealing with these issues, let alone a reserve that is equipped with not very much. How is that supposed to resolve itself? It's not set up, you know?
Well, this one is
like
more drastic. It's like in the city, you'll get arrested and put in jail. Here, they'll banish, you know, banish you from the reserve and bulldoze the property down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is certainly more direct and more confrontational, more dramatic.
Yeah. Is it a sign of, like, frustration and desperation?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's absolutely a sign of desperation and frustration.
Your camera's got the shakes. It's on meth.
It's just on withdrawal.
Yeah, we're okay.
That was too many meth jokes.
For those of you at home, we're just having our cameras jonesing, I think, for camera
Maybe it's
oil.
the camera
or something
operator.
like
We don't know. But anyway.
You were saying.
As I was saying, I do think that you know, it's coming from a place of fear, and that I think a lot of the times we talk about, you know, we have to get away from these colonial ways of doing things, but I think, you know, banishment and you know, the destruction of homes, I feel like that's a tad bit colonial.
Yeah.
I think if we were to deal with a meth crisis, then we would have to deal with, what is the crisis about? And oftentimes drug problems comes from trauma.
It's not the root, like it's not,
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, God bless all the bands out there who actually try to stop drugs and alcohol from coming into the reserve. I've been to so many communities where the RCMP are going through an airplane on the tarmac right after it touched down because of a suspected, person on the plane, or maybe it's just a routine check of what's inside the airplane. But they're doing as much as they possibly can now, but meth is a completely different animal.
Yeah.
What kind of support? Like, I know for me on Facebook, I go on Twitter, and I see a lot of people happy that somebody is at least doing something. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it may not be...
why aren't other communities doing this? We've seen to Peguis and Saugeen.
It's possible that it's something that could happen more. I mean, like you said, there's communities that have done various levels of prohibition in the past. There's dry communities in northern Manitoba and Ontario. I don't know how effective they are, though. That's the problem, is that a lot of times if you simply eliminate the thing, it's not necessarily dealing with the cause, right?
Yeah.
And in non-Indigenous communities, I was raised in a small farming community. Every village or town seems to have the party house, something always going on at the party house, and they didn't bulldoze it to the ground, but meth wasn't, a thing back then. And nowadays there's a movie out right now called Ma.
Oh, I want to see it.
I knew you would.
So bad.
Is it really?
And it's about a woman who opens her house to teenagers, and they're allowed to come in there after school and at night and just party their brains out. And then when they get too much partying and start to stay away, then Ma comes after them, and I don't know what she does, but doesn't have a happy ending. So you have that in the mainstream media now, where it's cool to go to the party house and party, and then maybe they'll make a movie of you. And it's like, nah, I don't think that's the message. But
Okay, if you were to be banished from a community, what would it be for?
Not again.
Would it be Elvis related?
Going to Graceland.
He's been banished from Graceland. Well, I think we've solved this issue once and for all. That's what the Laughing Drum is all about. We got to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to have more with the Red Power Paddle. Don't go away, or the racists win. Welcome back to the Laughing Drum, television so thoroughly Indigenous, our Red River cart is pulled by a caribou. I'm your host, Tim Fontaine, and I am here with TV's nichiest team of pundits, the Red Power Panel. And we're moving on to our second topic of the evening. Let's talk politics. The Red River, what am I talking about? The federal election is just months away, and Indigenous people find themselves forced to choose again. Do you go with the Liberals, who have promised much but arguably delivered little? Do you give parties like the Greens or the NDP a shot? Or maybe you miss the Conservatives? Or maybe you don't vote at all, like many Indigenous people do. Red Power Panel, how is this upcoming election looking to you? I don't know.
It's a hot mess. Well, my family, I have been a Liberal for my entire life. As soon as they plucked me off the reserve in the...
They gave you a card.
Gave me a card and said, there you go. So I went to these Liberal meetings with my mom and pa there back in the small town.
You were a very active Liberal.
I didn't want to be. I'd sooner be home watching cartoons, but they took me to the Liberal party meeting, which I always thought was interesting. And I thought, well, maybe I should run into politics. Because the point is, this time around, I think I might spoil my ballot.
Wow.
But, and my better half, Mrs. Bear, asked me, she said, well, how? And I said, that way they'll know that an Indigenous person cast their vote, but it was a spoiled ballot. And she said, well, how would they know that you're Indigenous? I said, they know. They know. I have a status card. They have numbers on us. Man, they're watching us right now. They know. I don't like it, but they're there.
Sasha, you're a young person. How are you feeling about the election?
I'm feeling very youthful about it.
All right.
As somebody who is moving to BC, what if I move to Granville?
Yes. Well, there you go.
And I think I have someone I would vote for. It's really difficult. I think it's hard to vote when you're an Indigenous person, especially when you see the lack of representation. Like, we can't even get representation in like superhero movies, you know. But they'll cast 95 aliens. They'll make up races to put on that show, but they won't put us in those movies. So like, let alone like that, it's hard for it's difficult for us to see ourselves in politics, in the government.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Melissa?
I don't know. I mean, some of our people who are in politics are in the sunken place, so that's just not very promising. You know, truth be told, when I was younger, I used to be a card-carrying member of the NDP.
Really?
Yep.
You commie.
I will admit it. Yep, I like socialism. But as I got older and discovered that same bird, different wing, I stopped voting. And it just, for me, I could not partake in an activity that I find so detrimental to Indigenous peoples.
But people are saying if you don't vote, then you don't have the right to complain about anything that the government does, because they gave you the opportunity, you didn't vote, so please.
I mean, I get it, but also it's still my land, so I do, it's, you know, like...
It's like you're given like 3 gluten options and you're gluten-free, and you're like, well, I can't eat any of this, so I can't do this.
Yeah.
So you can complain about what you're given.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I just... There is nothing appealing about anyone in politics right now. And I just, you know, I can't partake in a system that is so dangerous and just blatantly racist.
What are you hearing from other Indigenous people about this upcoming election? Fellow Indigenous people. Hello, fellow Indigenous people.
I've been hearing a lot of, I'm very excited for Andrew Scheer, I think we've all said that.
I've heard a lot of people sort of like moaning and groaning, but then being like, oh, I guess I have to vote for Trudeau again. And I haven't heard too many people being like, well, let's give Andrew a try. You know, I think... I think he might be good for our people. I haven't heard a whole lot of that. I've just heard a lot of people being like, Trudeau.
Well, I think what we need as Indigenous people is a super Indigenous candidate. I don't know what party. It could be the Indigenous Party, could be the War Party, as we suggested in the past.
Bring it back to the War Party, baby!
What we need, ladies and gentlemen, if it pleases the court, a super Indigenous candidate, one that is as handsome and as beautiful as Justin Trudeau. Somebody that would, you always want to take see now.
Look at what's happening
Somebody
now.
that you always want to take a selfie with, right?
Yes.
Somebody that is so damn gorgeous and beautiful that, I just have to have a picture taken with this beautiful Indian. And then, they have the policies, and it can be a man or a woman, but they also have to be able to back it up, and I think you have to have the quality of the Queen of Dragons. In fact, if you had a pet dragon, that would be good. If you went into politics and then this dragon follows you around, and wherever you are, if there's a meth house, you can just torch it, and you're all right, I'm losing.
Jerry answered my next question, was what's a party going to have to do to appeal to Indigenous voters? But Alyssa, aside from dragons and stunning beauty,
I don't know. Those are pretty.
those are pretty appealing
those are
things.
pretty appealing things, you know.
What would make you suddenly get excited about a party?
I think action to back policy. Like if people, you know, like we've all seen people make these policies and, you know, say like, oh, we're committing to this and we're going to do all this amazing stuff and, you know, make right by our Indigenous peoples. And then, you know, once they're elected, they're like, but not right now. I think I would have to see somebody actually do that before I had gained any sort of trust in politics, which I haven't seen yet. So I would have to, I'd basically have to watch it happen.
Sasha, what's gonna turn you on to a party?
I think for me, what's really important is like good weed. I think that I think honestly.
Well, it's legal now.
It's legal now, so that's a possibility.
$2 weed.
$2 weed.
That's not good weed.
Take a short break. And when we come back, we'll have more insanity like this from the Red Power panel. Fix yourself a moose meat and bannock sandwich and come right back.
Did you know we got the social medias?
Don't lie.
It's true. Like the Laughing Drum on Facebook and follow us on Twitter right now.
Welcome back to whatever the hell this show is supposed to be. I'm your host, Tim Fontaine, and you know, those other TV shows have their at-issue panels or their power panels or their whites-only panels, but only the Laughing Drum has the Red Power panel, and they are ready to tear into our next topic like a flock of hungry crows. Land acknowledgements. Can't live with them, don't like it when people don't do them. Well, Alberta's newly elected United Conservative Party has decided they're going to be optional. Red Power panel, what do you make of this?
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I've been to a lot of functions where the coordinators, the moderators always welcome the guests and acknowledge the elders, as I do. And just recently, in the last 3 years or so, people are acknowledging you're on Treaty 1 territory or you're wherever you happen to be. And they even did it on the NHL during the playoffs with the Winnipeg Jets, which I thought was a really proud moment. I thought, you know, if kids, this might inspire some kids, you know, because now they're acknowledging who we are on national television with the Winnipeg Jets.
But there is a push now, I guess, a criticism of land acknowledgements as being ultimately not meaningless, but I think it's a little misguided because it's saying there's no pledge behind it. There's no pledge to do better. It just says, we're on this land, we stole it. It's whatever, right? So, but I mean, that's the funny thing about this Alberta politicians saying it's optional is because they won't even do that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm surprised that they, went as far as optional. Like, I'm surprised they didn't, outright ban it and then bulldoze it. Like, we're
back to this.
Because as an Indigenous person, I do find it a tad bit cringy when, white folks address, a room full of people and they're like, we're on Treaty 1 territory, home of all these nations, but we're not giving it back.
It's not a magical spell.
No, we're just, sometimes I kind of feel like it's taunting. Like they're like, hey, guess what? We're on your land. Thanks. Sorry, not sorry.
Well, if they're not meaningful or the message is a little weird, does it matter then that Alberta does it or not?
I think in a certain way, it is the bare minimum of what you can do, and if Alberta is not even willing to do that, what does that translate to what they're willing to do for Indigenous people later down the road? I do understand the dialogue of it being an empty rhetoric, white people just saying it, patting themselves on the back, and being like, I'm reconciliating, it's that. But and I've also seen land acknowledgements done by people, and I'm like, yo, you fired Indigenous people. You shouldn't be saying this. So a lot of problematic people still say it, and I'm just like, I don't think you.
But what about? Now here's something. I have nothing to do with the show. I'm not the writer. I'm not the director. I'm here. How come this show doesn't acknowledge what treaty land we're on at the beginning of the program? Because we are on Treaty 1 territory, and we're acknowledging all these different Indigenous topics every week. Should we not lead by example and do it ourselves? Tim?
you know what? I thought about doing that. It was almost like live from New York. It's, you know, whatever.
Treaty
Live
One
from
territory.
Treaty One territory. It's the Laughing Drum. Ah! There's one guy clapping. I don't know. I'm absolved. I think though, like, because I think I personally, you know, and I can say this because I'm not a reporter anymore. I personally feel like land acknowledgements. Like Hayden King, who wrote a very famous one that's used in Toronto a lot, regrets writing it because he said there is no pledge to do better with it. There's no pledge to improve relations. It's simply an acknowledgement that we're here, right? And I think I kind of follow that, and I'm not smart enough to figure out how to write one that says.
I actually went to a concert recently. It was the Metric concert, and July Talk was the opening band, and they did this epic land acknowledgement where it started off like a typical land acknowledgement, and I was like, oh, shut up! Shut up! But then she proceeded to say, you know, like, we're working towards righting those wrongs and, you know, working towards better relations. Like, they just kind of like went into more detail about what a land acknowledgement actually should be about and acknowledging why we actually do them. And I thought that was pretty decent, you know, coming from, you know, like a white person.
What band was this?
July Talk.
Never heard of them.
Never heard of them.
They're pretty decent Canadian band.
They play the guitar?
They play the guitar. They're really fun to watch. But that was the only time I've ever seen like a decent land acknowledgement.
There was some thought put into it.
Yeah, there was some thought put into it, and she even acknowledged like you know, Two-Spirit people within that land acknowledgement. And because I know for myself, as you know, a Two-Spirit Anishinaabe person, whenever I'm asked to do a land acknowledgement, there's a part of me that's just like, oh, kill me now. This is, it's just, yeah, it's like giving yourself a, you know, like a needle or something, you know, like giving your own vaccine. It's, you know, why do I have to do this?
The only acknowledgement I do every show is for Sasha's mustache.
Yes.
That is
Every
true.
single
That
show.
is true. And
And
it is
my
sacred.
own terrible facial hair.
You know what? When you grow up,
When you grow up, you'll get one.
you'll get there.
All right. So, just say yes or no. Land acknowledgements, yes or no? Where are you? Maybe? If done right?
Yes, I'm in.
You're in? Yeah.
If done right, yes.
I think reevaluation is good.
Yeah?
Yes. But to throw them away is worse.
Yeah.
You know.
Do something. All right. And speaking of doing something, I'm going to say goodbye. That's all the heckin' time we have for this heckin' episode of The Laughing Drum. Gitchiest me gwitches to the crew for making this show happen each week. Thanks to the Red Power panel for cracking open their noggins and sharing the warm goo inside. And thank to you, our dozens of viewers, for tuning in each week. We'll see you back here next Tuesday. Good night.